When I was first called by God to serve, I felt deeply stirred. After 3 years of pastoral ministry, through handling difficult leaders, managing change amongst various groups, I was so stressed. I thought, God, it's so difficult. I came in here because I felt inspired, but now it doesn't seem so valid anymore. Can I step out of ministry now? But God said, no, this is my calling for you. I realized then, no choice. It's a calling. Being called to be a shepherd of God's people is a precious thing. A call to give your life to that is not the same as other calls. It's a call to carry the burden that Jesus carries on his shoulders, the broken, imperfect people of God, the ministry of God's church. Could such a precious calling be derailed and the shepherd of God stumble? You bet it can. As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, because my flock lacks a shepherd, and so has been plundered and has become food for all the wild animals, and because my shepherds did not search for my flock, but cared for themselves rather than for my flock, therefore, O shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. I am against the shepherds and will hold them accountable for my flock. I will remove them from tending the flock so that the shepherds can no longer feed themselves. What builds a strong and secure shepherd? One that has the heart and perseveres in caring for God's flock. The first ingredient is as described in this video's title, security in God. In the growing years of the shepherd, often even before the call to ministry, God works to build the shepherd's esteem and security in God. There have been many times when praying for young people who feel called that I released a prophetic word saying this is a time of training, that God is preparing you for something greater. Be faithful in small things. Be faithful in your training. This lays the foundation for the shepherd to hear God rather than man, to stand strong amidst intimidation and be a model and example. Paul instructs Timothy, the young pastor, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in life, in love, in faith, and in purity. A second ingredient for a secure shepherd is that of segment ministry skills. Now by this I mean the skills for a specific arena or segment of the church. For youth ministry, it may be preaching, one-on-one discipleships, small groups. For cell ministry, it may be running good CGs, raising CG leaders, mobilizing CGs and zones for outreach. For an executive pastoral role, it may be the administrative coordination, the strategic planning and communication. These are skills which are for that specific segment of church life. Depending on what you're called to or given exposure to, it would be great to learn them well as best as you can. This part often challenges and inspires shepherds to give their best, being excellent, honoring the Lord with sacrifice. A third ingredient for a secure shepherd is that of pastoral people skills. While segment ministry skills often focus on task skills for functioning well in a specific segment, pastoral people skills have to do with breadth, to relate to influence and win a broader segment of people than what the shepherd is used to. The younger person to lead the older, the man to lead the woman, the single to lead families, connecting, influencing, and winning them to the God direction for their lives. There was a season in my ministry where I had to supervise several pastors much older and more experienced than myself. One of them, a lady, was near my mother's age. The other man had been a high-ranking officer in the civil service, even in their leadership training school before coming into ministry. By some quirk of circumstances, they came under my supervision, and it was such a challenge to lead them. I often had to speak with respect, correct gently, though firmly. I sometimes had to give feedback despite their greater experience. And despite all the pressures, I supervised them for nearly 2 years. When it was time for me to step down, they both came to me separately. One said to me she had enjoyed a very encouraging, uplifting supervision the last 2 years, better than what she had ever experienced before. The other complimented me on a positive model of leadership, and I think coming from one who had been in the government training school, that was a real compliment. Years after my stepping down, he in fact invited me back to minister in church, even though I had stepped down already. And I can tell you my season of supervising them, if there was any impact, was because I majored on influence and not on force, connecting with them rather than being insensitive to them. And from their comments and actions, I know that it left an impact upon them. This part often will break and humble shepherds to face intimidation in a godly way, to learn from even the younger, to love people as the highest and only motive in the shepherd's heart. Now, a fourth ingredient of a secure shepherd is that of overseer and management skills. This has got to do with leading several groups of stakeholders to move God's ministry forward. Stakeholders may include the senior staff, the church board, government authorities in related fields, and even more, depending on the breadth of the church's ministry. A pastor I coach in the Philippines acts as the principal of a church-run school. She also oversees several church plants from the denomination. The challenges we often talked about are the livelihood and the bandwidth of the teachers who are also bivocational pastors, as well as mentoring leaders for the junior and senior school, maintaining the accreditation with government authorities. This ingredient requires the shepherd to bring all the stakeholders together to move as one for a greater vision in Christ. And this often requires a complex of abilities such as multitasking, negotiation, vision casting, wisdom, and faith to step out. Each ingredient is neither separate nor standalone. Far from it, they interweave as God grows the shepherd. In later years, the shepherd more than ever needs to hear God and be secure in Him. In earlier years as a young pastor, the shepherd may also learn to relate with a broad segment of people groups. However, there may be seasons where a particular ingredient may be the focus and needed learning curve for the shepherd. If a shepherd learns the lessons in that season well and holds to it through his or her life, it serves to build a strong and secure shepherd. There is something to be learned from David as an exemplary shepherd. Indeed, the psalmist says of David that he shepherded them with integrity of heart and skillful hands he led them. May we grow to be shepherds with integrity of heart and hands of skill for the sake of God's sheep. May we grow to be strong and secure shepherds.